Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video and leaving such heartfelt comments. Wishing the whole family good health and peace. Early in the morning, as the sunlight began to peek over the lush green hills, Diep woke up early. She donned her familiar plaid shirt and a turquoise turban, then pedaled her bike down to the city market. The air was filled with the calls of vendors, the bustling atmosphere alive with fresh vegetables, onions, and spices. Diep carefully selected each bundle of vibrant greens and firm onions, imagining them soon thriving in her garden. After finishing her shopping, she loaded the basket onto her bike, her heart brimming with excitement for the day's planting plans. The market buzzed with life, and she exchanged friendly nods with familiar faces, feeling a sense of community. On her way back, a cool breeze brushed her face, carrying the scent of the earth. Diep smiled, dreaming of peaceful days in her small garden. Upon arriving home, she carried her basket inside, placing it gently on the wooden table in her modest house. The house, adorned with a vibrant red curtain, exuded a warm coziness. She began her work, taking a hoe to loosen the soil, preparing it for planting with meticulous care and love. The rhythmic sound of the hoe against the earth brought her a quiet satisfaction, a connection to the land she cherished. Diep carefully placed each onion bulb into the ground, covering them with a thin layer of soil before gently watering them. Next, she arranged the green vegetable seedlings in neat rows, envisioning their growth in the coming weeks. The chirping of birds from the neighboring garden added to her enthusiasm. Though the work was tiring, it brought her simple joy. Sungkwan, green nets shielded the garden, protecting the plants from insects and birds. She paused to adjust the nets, ensuring every plant was safe, her hands stained with rich soil. Unaware, Diep was oblivious to a major incident unfolding for James, with whom she had a recent misunderstanding. In the distance, the roar of a motorcycle engine sounded as James received a call from his assistant. But at that moment, Diep's mind was solely on the newly planted rose. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, gazing at her work with satisfaction. Little did she know that this day would be filled with turmoil and surprises. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows, a silent witness to her peaceful labor. Diep took a short break, sipping water while admiring her garden. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting shimmering spots on the ground. She thought about the future, envisioning meals made with vegetables grown by her own hands. Yet, a faint unease crept in as she heard a strange noise from afar. Shrugging it off, she continued her task, unaware that fate was about to orchestrate a fateful encounter. She stretched her arms, feeling the ache of a good day's work, her spirit lifted by the promise of growth. While Diep toiled in her garden, James received an unexpected call from his assistant. The urgent voice came through the phone. "Mr. James, the lumber yard has been robbed. Money and wood are missing, and there are signs of a suspicious gang." James frowned, his heart heavy with worry. He quickly changed into his sleek black suit and sped off to the lumber yard with breakneck speed. The rugged mountain roads didn't slow him down. He was determined to uncover the truth. His mind raced with questions, wondering who could dare target his business. Upon arrival, the scene at the lumber yard unfolded before him. Stacks of wood lay in disarray, with a portion clearly taken. His assistant guided him through the site, pointing out unusual marks on the floor and abandoned trucks. James moved forward, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. He called the security team, demanding an immediate investigation. A tense atmosphere enveloped the area, the wind whistling through the woodpiles like a warning. The scent of freshly cut timber mingled with the dust, heightening the sense of urgency. After the inspection, James felt exhausted and needed a moment to rest. He stepped into a secluded corner, heading toward the yard's restroom. At that moment, Diep happened to pass by on her way back from the garden. Spotting James' car parked in front of the yard, a wave of guilt washed over her about their previous misunderstanding. Hoping to apologize, she approached, but only found the assistant busy with work. The assistant's hurried demeanor reflected the chaos James was dealing with. Diep hesitated, asking, "Is Mr. James here? I'd like to speak with him." The assistant shook his head, explaining that James was occupied with the inspection and unavailable. Disheartened, she nodded and turned to leave. Tears welled up as she recalled the harsh words she had unintentionally directed at James. She walked slowly, unaware that fate was about to thrust her into another situation. The path crunched under her feet, each step echoing her inner turmoil. In the distance, James emerged from the corner but missed seeing Diep. He called his assistant to check on progress, his mind still burdened by the theft. Diep faded into the distance along the dirt path, carrying unspoken sorrow. But before she could get far, she jolted at a familiar voice calling from behind, the voice of her ex-husband, whom she had tried to forget for years. The sudden interruption sent a shiver down her spine, shattering the morning's calm. Diep turned around, her heart pounding as she recognized the familiar figure of her ex-husband, Min. He approached with determination, his face etched with anger, his eyes glinting with fury. "Diep, you can't hide from me forever," Min shouted, his voice commanding. She stepped back, trying to maintain distance, but Min lunged forward, grabbing her arm and pulling her along. Diep struggled, yelling, "Let me go! I don't want to see you anymore." Her voice trembled with a mix of fear and defiance. At that moment, James stepped out of the lumber yard and spotted the chaotic scene from afar. Without hesitation, he rushed toward them. His car still idled with a warm engine, but he didn't need it. He sprinted with the speed of the wind. "Let her go!" James roared, his voice laced with authority. Min turned, challenging, "Who are you to interfere in my business?" But under James' cold, piercing gaze, Min began to falter. The tension between the two men crackled in the air. Without another word, James shoved Min away, freeing Diep from his grasp. Trembling, tears streamed down her face, yet she felt safe standing beside James. He gently embraced her, offering silent comfort. Min stood there, furious but unwilling to advance, eventually turning and storming off, leaving a trail of curses behind. Diep leaned into James' shoulder, her heart a mix of turmoil and gratitude. The warmth of his presence steadied her racing pulse. James looked at her, asking softly, "Are you okay?" Diep nodded, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you. I never thought you'd help me." He smiled, waving it off. "Don't worry, I understand what it feels like to be forced." They stood there for a moment, the quiet of the dirt path filled with the gentle rustle of wind and distant bird calls. Diep regained her composure, knowing she needed to explain yesterday's misunderstanding to James. The morning air felt heavier with unresolved emotions. James suggested, "Do you want to go home? I'll take you." Diep nodded, and they walked together toward his car. On the way, she began recounting her story, her voice trembling but sincere. James listened, occasionally nodding, his heart gradually opening to this small yet resilient woman. This unexpected encounter shifted their dynamic from tension to a fragile understanding. The journey back promised a chance for healing, though the shadow of Min lingered in their minds. James' car rolled slowly along the dirt path, bringing Diep back to her familiar garden. Upon arrival, she invited him in, seizing the chance to clarify things. Diep sat beside the newly planted rose, looking at James with genuine eyes. "Yesterday I misunderstood you," she began. "I didn't know about your lumber yard, and I said some harsh words. I'm sorry." Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, a sign of her nervousness. James sat across from her, his gaze warm. "It's fine, I was a bit hasty too. I get how you felt seeing me there." He smiled, easing the heavy atmosphere. Diep sighed in relief, feeling a weight lift from her chest. They began talking, moving from small misunderstandings to everyday stories, gradually bridging the gap between them. His calm demeanor encouraged her to open up, revealing more of her gentle nature. Diep suggested, "Stay a bit, and we'll water the plants together." James agreed, and they took the watering cans, evenly moistening the green rose. The sound of water trickling mingled with their soft laughter. James unexpectedly complimented, "You're really good at growing vegetables." Diep laughed, sharing her love for the land. They worked together like old friends, leaving past tensions behind. The garden seemed to bloom under their shared effort. Meanwhile, Diep offered to cook to thank James. She entered the kitchen, preparing dishes from her freshly grown vegetables. The aroma wafted out, drawing James in. He lent a hand, chopping vegetables and setting the table. The small house, with its red curtain, felt cozier than ever. They sat together, enjoying the meal they had made. The taste of home-cooked food deepened their bond, a silent acknowledgement of trust. The meal unfolded in a cheerful mood. Diep shared stories of her early struggles with gardening, while James spoke of the pressures of managing the lumber yard. They laughed, forgetting the day's turmoil. The fading sunlight streamed through the window, casting a peaceful scene. James looked at Diep, silently noting her strength and warm heart. He wondered if this day marked the beginning of something more meaningful. The meal ended, but the warmth between Diep and James lingered. They cleared the table, washing dishes together by the cool stream. Diep reminisced about her childhood, helping her mother tend the garden. James listened, occasionally interjecting with humorous tales from his city days. Laughter rang out, dispelling the day's fatigue. The sound of water splashing added a playful rhythm to their conversation. After cleaning up, they stepped outside to admire the garden under the sunset. Deep pointed out which plants were thriving and which needed care. James tried planting a small seedling, but soil splattered everywhere, making them both laugh. "Maybe I'm better with wood than plants," he joked. Deep shook her head, encouraging him to try again. His clumsy attempt brought a lightness to the evening, a shared moment of vulnerability. Night fell and the small fire outside the house began to crackle. Deep lit it, preparing tea, while James sat nearby, sharing his plans to expand the lumber yard. They talked like close friends, forgetting their initial distance. Deep poured tea for James and they sipped, savoring the rich flavor. The fire's glow illuminated their faces, casting a warm hue over the scene. James looked around, praising, "Your home is so peaceful, so different from my hectic life." Deep smiled, saying she cherished the simplicity. They sat by the fire, listening to the wind through the trees. A sense of calm enveloped them, but in James' heart, a thought emerged. He was beginning to admire this woman beyond mere sympathy. Deep sensed his sincerity too, her heart stirring with a new emotion. Their conversation stretched into the night. Deep spoke of her dream to expand the garden into a small farm, and James promised to support her if needed. They gazed at the star-filled sky, feeling a new connection forming. Unbeknownst to them, troubles at the lumber yard persisted, and men might return at any moment. The night air carried a hint of mystery, foreshadowing challenges ahead. The next morning, early sunlight filtered through the cracks, waking Deep and James after a night of conversation. They rose, checking the garden together. The green sprouts emerging brought hope to Deep. James offered, "If you need wood for a trellis, just let me know." Deep smiled, touched by his kindness. The morning dew glistened on the leaves, a symbol of new beginnings. They tidied the garden, preparing for the new day. James received a call from his assistant, reporting that the security team had found some clues about the theft. He bid Deep farewell, promising to visit again. Deep waved, her heart full of gratitude and a hint of longing. His car rolled down the path, disappearing behind the hills. The silence that followed felt both comforting and lonely. But as James vanished from sight, Deep heard a strange noise. Turning, she gasped as Min's figure reappeared. He advanced, face contorted with rage, wielding a stick. Deep trembled but resolved not to be bullied again. She screamed for help, hoping James would return. The sound of her cry echoed through the valley, a desperate plea for safety. Fortunately, James heard her cry from afar. He turned the car, racing back at full speed. Arriving, he saw Min raising the stick to strike Deep. Without hesitation, James charged, knocking Min to the ground. The brief scuffle ended as Min fled, shouting, "I'll be back." Dust settled around them, marking the end of the confrontation. James helped Deep up, checking on her with concern. She cried, but this time with relief. "Thank you, James," she whispered. He took her hand, promising, "I'll protect you. We'll get through this together." They looked at each other, sensing a new journey beginning. Under the morning light, they walked home, carrying hope and a deepening bond. The horizon stretched wide, promising both challenges and possibilities.
Lý tử điệp là một cụm từ trong từ tiếng Việt, có nghĩa là cuộc sống cô đơn, tách biệt, không có sự gắn kết với người khác. Nếu bạn đang tìm kiếm thông tin về cuộc sống Lý Tử Điệp, tôi có thể cung cấp một số thông tin chung về chủ đề này. Cuộc sống Lý Tử Điệp có thể có kết quả của nhiều yếu tố khác nhau, chẳng hạn như sự lựa chọn cá nhân. Một số người có thể chọn cuộc sống Lý Tử Điệp vì họ muốn tập trung vào công việc, học tập hoặc các hoạt động khác của cá nhân. Điều kiện sống: những người sống ở khu vực hẻo lánh hoặc có điều kiện sống khó khăn có thể phải đối mặt với cuộc sống Lý Tử Điệp. Tình trạng sức khỏe: những người mắc bệnh mãn tính hoặc có tình trạng sức khỏe kém có thể phải sống Lý Tử Điệp để bảo vệ sức khỏe của mình. Cuộc sống Lý Tử Điệp có thể có cả mặt tích cực và mặt tiêu cực. Mặt tích cực có thể giúp người ta tập trung vào bản thân, phát triển kỹ năng, tự lập và tự chăm sóc. Mục tiêu tích cực. Mặt tiêu cực, nó có thể dẫn đến cảm giác cô đơn, buồn rầu và có thể thiếu sự hỗ trợ từ người khác. Nếu bạn đang trải qua cuộc sống Lý Tử Điệp và cảm thấy khó khăn, có thể bạn nên tìm kiếm sự hỗ trợ từ bạn bè, gia đình hoặc các chuyên gia tâm lý. Cuộc sống buồn và cô đơn có thể là một trải nghiệm khó khăn và đau đớn. Dưới đây là một số nguyên nhân và biểu hiện của cuộc sống buồn và Lý Tử Điệp. Nguyên nhân: mất người thân. Mất người thân yêu có thể dẫn đến cảm giác buồn và cô đơn. Thứ hai là tách biệt, chuyển đến một nơi mới, thay đổi cuộc sống hoặc mất liên lạc với bạn bè có thể dẫn đến cảm giác lý tử điệp. Thứ ba, bệnh tật mãn tính và đau đớn.